Good morning and welcome to Light Reflections from First Friends. We are glad you have chosen to join us for this virtual worship service and hope you find it beneficial to your spiritual journey. We consider this an abbreviated version of our in-person meeting for worship for those wishing to join us from a distance. If this is your first time joining us, First Friends is a thriving, progressive Quaker meeting in the city of Indianapolis, Indiana. We consider ourselves a loving, inclusive, joyous gathering of people seeking to know truth under the leadership of God's Spirit. All are welcome, no matter race, age, cultural background, sexual orientation and identity, marital status, physical and mental ability, family structure, or economic circumstance. Our hope is that through this worship experience, you will discover our faith community is unlike any other, where silent meditation is as important as the spoken word, where we emphasize the importance of one's personal encounter with the divine, and where we seek to support one another as we discover truth together. Now we invite you to center down and enter this virtual worship space with us.
Sometimes I hide and hope you don't see. The lights are off and the blinds drawn, but the beam of your love illuminates me, and I'm found and I am exposed. You scorch me with your painful light. I turn my face from what you see. I'm afraid that you'll get too close, but your spirit compels me, and I rush into you like a river to the sea. I pour into you and you surround me. I rush into you like a river to the sea. I pour into you and you receive me. I cower down in my small cave. I want to be safe, left alone. The truth of your love terrifies me, so I try to hold my own. Like snow melts on the mountaintop and races through the rocks and trees, driven on, it's drawn to the source that first set it free. And I rush into you like a river to the sea. I pour into you and you surround me. I rush into you like a river to the sea. I pour into you and you receive me. 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 I
Good morning, friends, and welcome to Light Reflections. I'm sharing this message with you today because Bob Henry started his sabbatical this week and will be gone for 2 months. So we wish him well on his journeys in this sabbatical time. Our scripture reading is from Romans 12, 1-2, NRSV. I appeal to you, therefore, brothers and sisters, on the basis of God's mercy, to present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and acceptable to God, which is your reasonable act of worship. Do not be conformed to this age, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind, so that you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. In Proverbs 3, 4-6, then you will find favor and high regard in the sight of God and of people. Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and do not rely on your own insight. In all ways, acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. A few weeks ago, my son sent me a video of a man being interviewed about his struggles with PTSD and a feeling of irritation that he carried around every day. The Buddhists call this dukkha. This man started studying the 12-step program, not for drinking or drugs, but for his PTSD and his emotional pain. He learned he had to open himself up and take a searing account of what was going on inside of him. He realized that emotional pain is physical pain. And as he worked through the steps, he started telling his close friends what was going on in his life, believing if he really opened himself up to these people, they would never talk to him again. And what he experienced was the exact opposite. They rallied around him. He started to cry on the video. I began thinking about how the church should be like a 12-step community, and that the tenets of the 12-step program apply to all of us as we deal with things in our life. I think much of what Jesus taught mirrors the 12-step program. Richard Rohr wrote about this in his book, Breathing Underwater, about how biblically based the 12-step program is. The 12 steps are a profound way of discovering, following, and learning to live in the peace, the joy, and the freedom in the way demonstrated by Jesus. As many of you know, my son is in recovery for over 4 years. AA saved his life. His recovery was far more than a physical recovery from addiction to alcohol. The only way he conquered this physical pain was through a spiritual resurrection, and it was by working through the 12 steps. I began my admiration for this community when I was sitting in the lobby of Progress House near downtown a number of years ago. Progress House is a supervised sober house for men. This was one of a couple of steps before my son went to New Jersey 5 years ago for rehab. I sat in that lobby and saw these men from all walks of life, vacuuming, working the front desk, doing maintenance work outside, and being vulnerable in their weakness and holding each other accountable in their journey. It was in that moment in the lobby that I physically felt Jesus' presence in the room with these broken men trying to turn their lives around, and I started crying. It was a profound spiritual experience. I've studied a bit about AA as I've wondered how this organization continues to thrive as a totally volunteer group. No fees, no insurance, little hierarchy, locally driven, non-denominational, apolitical, without dogma, and no ownership of buildings to meet in. They accept no donations from anyone outside of the group. This sounds to me a lot like the early Christian church. Some of you know the history of this organization, but it started in 1935 with a stockbroker from New York and a doctor from Akron, Ohio, Bob Smith and Bill Wilson, that were dealing with their own alcoholism. The program combined science and spirituality, and both men were Christians. The steps they developed were based on their Christianity, and yet they developed language that embraced all faith traditions and those without faith traditions. They saw that recovery required a spiritual awakening, followed by helping others on the journey. One of the founders called its structure a benign anarchy. Its inverted hierarchy has prevented it from having organizational issues as many other religious and political entities have had. The program has created an atmosphere of transcendence and embraces an all-encompassing worldview. We all need transformation. This is the essence of the gospel and what all of our faith communities should be about. Jesus said, "Come as you are." Acceptance, love, and grace is what an AA meeting offers, where stories are shared, forgiveness is offered, and hope is renewed. We also read in the Bible from many writers that speak of this idea of reaching a low point, a dark night of the soul, where we must release, let go of our ego, and give up into the grace of God's arms. The writer of Isaiah wrote about this in Isaiah 38:12-24. "My dwelling is plucked up and removed from me like a shepherd's tent. Like a weaver, I have rolled up my life. He cuts me off from the loom. From day to night, you bring me to an end. I cry for help until morning. Like a lion, he breaks all my bones. From day to night, you bring me to an end. My eyes are weary with looking up. O Lord, I am oppressed. Be my security." We have to expose our wounds, our pain for the light, the true light, to begin to shine on them and heal them. It's not just about changing our exterior. We must be changed at our core. Christ says that my grace is sufficient for you. My strength is made perfect in weakness. God is not requiring us to get our lives together so we are worthy of God's love and astounding grace. The light is available to us now in our brokenness. God doesn't withhold this until we clean up our act. God beckons and calls to us now. God also always goes right to the pain, asking us for humility and honesty. But we must let go of our ego. Step 3 talks about a radical surrendering of our will to another whom we trust more than ourselves. Many that work the program say this is the most important step. This way is always a way of weakness and powerlessness, as Jesus showed us. This radical transformation requires a different way of thinking. We're dealing with our reptilian brain that wants us to think in a dualistic way. We categorize and contrast everything as that is how our brains are wired. We go to an all or nothing place in our minds. This is how our ego rules ourselves and brings us into a constant state of fear and potential loss. We fear change and death. When we think in a dualistic way, we typecast people, and then we'll find the evidence that supports our beliefs. Thomas Aquinas said that no one intentionally does evil. In our dual minds and our addictive systems within our ego brain, we explain our behavior by rationalizing we're doing some good for something or someone. We can do evil without calling it evil. We become blind, letting go of our ego, recognize that we submit to a higher power, starts us on a journey of thinking in a more non-dualistic way. Everything is interconnected. We truly are beings that are united within. Another tenet of the AA program that is profound for the experience is not requiring the need to name God, but a higher power as one knows it. I have a dear friend that's a fundamentalist Christian that is dealing with a daughter with an addiction to fentanyl. She's currently in treatment but has not responded to the 12 steps and does not want to be a part of that program. They both do not like that the language used in the 12-step program that names a higher power, or whatever you want to call that, versus God. They both feel like one must call this being God because that is the truth. I understand they struggle with this language, but it feels like the founders were visionary in not quarreling with what to name this higher power. The church often gets too tied up with the naming of God. This higher power is really unnameable, as we heard right from the beginning with Moses at the burning bush. I am who I am. This has allowed AA to reach millions that struggle with their religion of upbringing and those of faith outside of Christianity. I wonder if our churches would expand if we stopped fretting over the naming of God. Richard Rohr writes in Breathing Underwater, a pretty astounding statement. I truly believe that the 12-step program will go down in history as America's greatest and unique contribution to the history of spirituality. It represents what is good about American pragmatism. There's something in the American psyche that becomes mistrustful and impatient with anything that's too abstract, theoretical, or distant. Americans want a spirituality that is relevant, that changes people, and that really makes a difference in this world. For many, the 12 steps do just that. They make the gospel believable, practical, and even programmatic for many people. Worthiness is not the issue. The issue is trust and surrender. As Teresa of Lisieux said, Jesus does not demand great actions from us, but simply surrender and gratitude. AA had the courage to recognize that you don't come to God by doing it right. You come to God by doing it wrong, and then falling into an infinite mercy. Any talk of growth, achievement, climbing, improving, and progress highly appeals to the ego. But the only way we stay on the path with any authenticity is to constantly experience our incapacity to do it, our failure at doing it. That's what makes us, to use my language, fall upward. Otherwise, we're really not climbing. We're just thinking we're climbing by saying to ourselves, look, I'm better today. Look, I'm holier than I was last week. Look, my prayer is improving. That really doesn't teach us anything new or lead us anywhere new. Rohr wrote Breathing Underwater, inspired by a poem by Carol Bleck that speaks of this common message that I'd like to share with you. I built my house by the sea, not on the sands, mind you, not on the shifting sand, and I built it of rock, a strong house by a strong sea. And we got well acquainted, the sea and I, good neighbors. Not that we spoke much, we met in silences, respectful, keeping our distance, but looking our thoughts across the fence of sand. Always the fence of sand our barrier, always the sand between. And then one day, I still don't know how it happened, the sea came, without warning, without welcome even. Not sudden and swift, but a shifting across the sand like wine, less like the flow of water than the flow of blood, slow but coming, slow but flowing like an open wound. And I thought of flight, and I thought of drowning, and I thought of death. And while I thought, the sea crept higher till it reached my door. And I knew then there was neither flight, nor death, nor drowning. That's when the sea comes calling you. Stop being neighbors, well-acquainted, friendly at a distant neighbors. And you give your house for a coral castle, and you learn to breathe underwater. Friends, we all must learn to breathe underwater. We will face pain. We will have difficult realities in our lives, disappointments, and we must learn to turn our homes into coral castles. I think one could go quite in depth with each step of the 12-step program, but I do want to read all 12 steps, adding the words of our own addictions versus alcohol. Step 1, we admitted that we were powerless over alcohol or whatever our addiction is, and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2, we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Step 3, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Step 4, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Step 5, we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6, We were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Step 7, we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Step 8, we made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Step 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Step 10, we continued to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Step 11, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our contact with God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and the power to carry that out. Step 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics or our faith communities and to practice these principles in all our affairs. I close this message with the Serenity Prayer by the 20th century theologian Reinhold Niebuhr. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. As we enter our time of waiting worship, I offer the following queries. Have I done a searing inventory of my heart? Do I embrace that God loves me in my brokenness? What is my part of building a community that loves and accepts all? Do I hold myself accountable as well as others?
to come some trouble to your life. That ain't nothing to be afraid of. Oh, there's bound to come some trouble to your life. That ain't no reason to fear. I know there's bound to come some trouble to your life. Reach out to Jesus and hold on tight. He's been there before and he knows what it's like. You'll find he's there. There's bound to come some tears up in your eyes. Well, that ain't nothing to be ashamed of. I know there's bound to come some tears up in your eyes. That ain't no reason to fear. I know there's bound to come some tears up in your eyes. Reach out to Jesus and hold on tight. He's been there before and he knows what it's like. You'll find he's there. Now people say maybe your things will get better, and people say maybe it won't be long, and people say maybe you'll wake up tomorrow and it'll all be gone. Well, I only know that maybe just ain't enough when you need something to hold on to. There's only one thing that's clear. There's bound to come some trouble to your life. That ain't nothing to be afraid of. I know there's bound to come some tears up in your eyes. That ain't no reason to fear. Oh, there's bound to come some trouble to your life. Reach out to Jesus and hold on tight. He's been there before and he knows what it's like. You'll find he's there.
We close this time of worship with a Quaker prayer. God, open our eyes and unstop our ears, that we may see your light and may hear your heartbeat, reflecting and resounding within our chests, in those of all our neighbors, near and far, in all creatures and plants, and in the ground we walk upon. When we finally are able to yield to the leading of your rhythm and flow, may we come to walk cheerfully over the world, answering that of you in all. Amen. Have a great week, friends.